good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. You know, in today's show, we're going to be talking about some deep concept. We're going to be talking about some stuff that, well, you know, it impacts all of us. And it's something that we probably have all thought about, we've probably all dealt with. And, you know, it's interesting when we deal with the real-life issues, you know, the stuff that we really think about, the how's how and the who's who and how is things going and what is happening in our life and what's the trajectory. And, you know, one of the things that I think about a lot of times is not only dealing with the aging process and dealing with us getting wiser and getting older, but also what happens after. You know, what happens after and dealing with that as well. And I think a lot of us get really scared to think about what happens after because it's normal, because we really don't know. We haven't seen it, and it's something that we kind of fear. There's a lot of mystery around it. It can be overwhelming. But I feel like in life, you know, there's a lot of things that there might be more questions, but there actually might be more answers than we actually even know exist. And so you know how I am on the show. I like to have folks on the show that can really, you know, answer some of those questions, and they have a truth to tell that can really impact our life in a powerful way. Joining me in studio today, Misty Thompson. Misty Thompson is a spiritual life coach. She's the founder of Mystified Enlightenment and the best-selling author of the new book, From Grief to Acceptance. She's here to help us right here in studio to deal with and to understand and to look beyond the illusion of death. Misty, great to have you in studio today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You know, I think that when we deal with our life, Misty, you know, we have these daily struggles, we get overwhelmed, we have these things that we have to deal with, we have responsibilities, but then there's like these things like birth and death and all these things that we don't really have answers for, and a lot of times we just have a lot of fear because we really don't know how to deal with it or how to mentally digest it. You know, how did you kind of get down this road of being an intuitive spiritual life coach, and how did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah. Well, my story actually started back in 1993. My sister was missing in August of 1993 in southeastern Arizona, where I live. And during that time, that's when I realized that I could connect with spirit. And it was at that time I was really confused. I didn't understand what was happening. But, you know, I knew without a doubt that I was talking to my sister. And it was just, I just knew without a doubt. So that's how I started realizing that I could connect with spirit. And, you know, 55 days later, her remains were found. And, you know, I kind of put everything on hold. I had 3 small children. I was working full time. And, you know, I just didn't have time to be talking to spirits, basically, you know. So I kind of put all of that on hold until probably about 8-10 years ago. And then it started opening up for me again.
So, Misty, let me ask you, okay, so your sister was missing, and you began to communicate with her, you could connect with her. What was that communication like? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, sure. It was just something, you know, sometimes we have those voices in our head, and it's kind of like we're talking to somebody, but we just don't know, you know, we're kind of talking to ourselves in our mind. But this time, she was answering me, and I could feel her. I sensed her. I just knew in my mind that we were having a conversation. The things we were talking about, it was pretty in depth, like we were having a normal conversation, only it was all in my mind. Now, back in 1993, of course, we did not have the internet. We did not talk about those kinds of things. So I was really scared because I didn't quite understand it. And I didn't know if I was just imagining. You know, I see clients, and a lot of my clients are the same way when their loved ones pass. And they say, well, I don't know, maybe it's just my mind playing tricks on me. But I found in my own experience that it was absolutely real. As real as I'm talking to you, I was talking to my sister, but it was all in my mind.
What were y'all talking about? I mean, what was she telling you where she was, or
Yeah,
was she explaining what
right.
was going on?
hmm Well, what she explained to me, and I wish she would have told me where she was at, but she did tell me that she would be found. It just wasn't time yet. And for us not to get caught up in the hatred, I guess you could say, because my sister's ex-husband admitted to the police that he was the last person to see her alive, which means he must have been the first one to see her dead if he was the last one to see her alive. So my mom was holding a whole lot of anger towards him, understandably so. But when I heard that from her, it was so reassuring, and I had peace come over me that, it was just like I got a glimpse into the fact that she was at peace, so therefore I was at peace. And with that, when she was a little confused as to what was happening at first, but she had known that her physical body was gone. And she was trying to talk to people, but nobody would listen to her. I was the only one who could listen.
Now, was anybody arrested for the murder of your sister?
No, To this day, there is no actual cause of death, and her murder has never been solved.
And where was she found when they did find her body? Where did they find her?
She was found in the desert, and this was probably about 10 miles from where I live now. And, I live, like I said, in a very small town, southeastern Arizona, so there's a lot of desert around us. The interesting thing about all of this was we weren't getting a whole lot of help from local law enforcement, specifically the sheriff at the time. And my mom hired a private investigator out of Mesa, Arizona. And one of his first questions to my mom, he's kind of going through to see if he can even help my mom. One of his first questions was, has anyone in your family been spiritually contacted? And that was a relief for me because, I didn't know if I was imagining things. I didn't feel like I was, but nobody really believed me. But on top of that, when he did decide to take the case and he did do the search for my sister, the place where she was found, the private investigator swears that she was not there because he did 3 types of searches in that same area where she was found, and she was not there. And he is trained to, he's done a lot with locating people who are missing, who have been murdered, that kind of thing. And he knows what to look for. And just, he said, the smell alone and all of that, he would have known where she was at had she been there. But we don't know for sure what happened to her. I personally do not believe that she was where she was found. I don't believe she was there the whole time. And neither does the private investigator.
So do you mean basically that her body was moved there, or that she was... What do you think the implication of that is?
Yeah. I do believe this is what I believe happened, just based on the experience of local law enforcement, the sheriff's office in particular, and just the knowing that I received from her. Now, again, she didn't really talk to me about what happened to her, where she was found, any of that, but I was seeing visions. And from what I saw, I believe she was moved at least 3 times. And in one of the visions that I saw, and honestly, I don't know if my sister gave me that vision to see, but I did see a black wooden box. Now, at the time, the investigator had found out that the sheriff was working with my sister's ex-husband to bring drugs into the area, into our community. And the reason for that was my sister's ex-husband was selling the drugs, telling the sheriff where they were, and then the sheriff would make these drug tests, so it made him look good. And from what I gathered based on my own intuition was that my sister knew about this and was going to expose them both. And a few days later, she came up missing.
Wow. That's some
so we think,
stuff.
we think that she was moved so her body would be at the right decomposition, and that way she wouldn't be able, nothing could be identified as to how she died. And that's exactly what happened.
When we return, we'll be talking more about understanding this and understanding Misty's gift to really be able to understand kind of the next step to understand death and to understand this experience, because I think this can be very powerful. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. You know it. We'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Joining me in studio, Misty Thompson. Misty is a spiritual healer, and it's amazing stuff that she's been doing. And right before the break, we were talking about, how she communicated, or better yet, how her sister communicated with her spiritually at the time of her sister going missing. So, Misty, tell us more about that. So you actually think that the body was moved multiple times because you saw some imagery, you saw a black box. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I believe I was at my mom's house, and I would doze off, and I would see visions. And one of the visions I did see was a black box. Now, again, I didn't see my sister in the box because she wanted us not to worry and not to dwell upon the fact that she was missing and what happened to her when she died, like how she died. She didn't want us to worry about those little, they're big things to us, but to her, it didn't matter. It was not important how she died. So she wanted to make sure that we did not know that. So in my visions, I would see a few things, like I saw the black box, and it was big enough to where a body would fit into it. It was like a makeshift casket. I also saw a barrel cactus with a big orange bloom, which here in the desert, that's not very uncommon. And then I also saw a man with a shirt with the sleeves cut off. However, I didn't see the face of the man. And again, I believe that was my sister kind of giving me a glimpse, but not wanting me to know the full details of who was involved and how it happened and why it happened.
What were your beliefs, at this time when, prior to even getting these visions, what were your beliefs about death at that time? And how did your sister's passing, change maybe that belief or augment that? Yeah.
Well, before, like most people, I was really afraid of death. I was scared of it. And at the time, nobody close to me had ever passed away. I mean, at the time, I still had my grandparents, so they were still alive. So I never really lost anybody that I was close to. So I was just really afraid of it. I didn't know what to expect. I was afraid of how I was going to die. I was afraid about my children because I had 3 small children, what was going to happen to them. So just the thought of death alone was quite scary to me. It was frightening. And, after that, I realized that I was more at peace with it, knowing that it is part of life. And I am in no way approve or, am happy about the way my sister died. However, I got a glimpse into her world on the other side, meaning that those little things really don't matter. We put so much stress upon that ourselves, and we really don't need to, because she assured me, like I'm sure most people and a lot of my clients have experienced this, they've had death of a loved one and they get dreams. And always in their dreams, they say that their loved ones came to them and tell them that they are okay. And I truly believe that with my sister. And I believe that now, no matter what happens about dying and even connecting with loved ones, it shouldn't be scary because it truly is their essence. And we know them. So death is a little more, I'm a little nervous about it, but not like I used to be. I understand it more, and I'm not afraid anymore. And as far as communicating with those who have passed, again, I am good because I know it's our loved ones, and they only want what's good for us, and they only want to help us.
It's an amazing story, though. I mean, not many people have dealt with this type of situation. Having
Right.
a loved one, especially a sister, murdered, going through that process. It's an eye-opening experience. And I understand that it's probably softened your thoughts on death as far as to know that energy-wise and spirit-wise, she's still in existence.
Sure.
How do you help people understand that? Because I think that's one of the most crucial things is, from a therapist perspective, when I'm in session, I hear clients talking about, well, I really wish I could have said goodbye to my mom or dad. And I kind of feel like they could do that now. I don't really know if they even need to say goodbye, but it's interesting how they go to a medium just to have that conversation, even though I really think they can do that conversation. How do you help folks understand that?
Yeah. Well, when I do readings for my clients, it's exactly like you said, and I tell them the same thing. They can do that anytime. And it's hard to explain how I got information about that, because not only can our loved ones on the other side, definitely they can hear us. We can have conversations with them. But they can, I don't want to say feel in the sense that like we feel, but they understand, and they understand the energetic vibration. So when someone's grieving, our loved ones can pick up on that energetic vibration. And because they were human, they understand what we're going through. Now, when our loved ones, when they have passed and they have that energetic tie to us, that never ends. And I explain that to my clients, but I demonstrate it as well as I'm doing readings for them. When I do readings for them, I pick up on those things, and they begin to understand that. And that's kind of how my business started. I started doing readings, but it ended up moving towards coaching, because of the fact that it had to go more in depth as to how they can communicate and what is going on with their loved ones on the other side.
That's awesome. About your book, From Grief to Acceptance. So was your connection, your spiritual connection with the situation with your sister, was that a precursor? And at the same time, the one thing we haven't talked about is that you were actually working in a correctional facility for 25 years as well. So were you in the prison system working in correctional facility at the same time? So did this impact you as far as writing this book and coming up with a concept for this book?
So it's interesting how this book all came about. I never intended on writing any books. That's, I think, how it usually ends up. But and like I said, I put everything on hold, and then my mom kept journals of everything that happened, and she tried to write it, but she just couldn't do it. It was painful. So she had asked me. She had said, asked if I would write the book once I retired. And when I retired back in 2015, that's when, well, it was about 5 years before I retired, all of the connections and connecting with spirit started happening. And I wrote my first book called By Your Side, and it was about what happened and what my mom and I and my grandmother and my family members went through during the time my sister was missing. And then as I was writing that book, that's when my sister came through and gave me the inspiration for this book and explained that we need to stop looking at the harsh, and I don't want to say negative because it's not really negative. It's just how we perceive anger and, all of that. It's the Kubler-Ross method of grieving. And that's natural, and that will happen, and it does happen. But my sister made it very clear that we need to focus a lot on the positives and the heartwarming and the real reasons why we are connected to our loved ones. And that is what I wrote in this book, From Grief to Acceptance.
Let me ask you real quick before we go to break. What is
Sure.
the majority of the spirits that come through that connect with you? What are they trying to convey?
Yeah. Most of them are trying to convey what, it's the same as when I'm doing individual readings, that they're okay, that they are always with us, and they want us to live in joy, and they do not want us to be afraid. They want us just to live our lives the best possible way we can.
When we return, we'll be talking more about that with Misty, more about dealing with the phases of grief and navigating through that and understanding that. So stay tuned, because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. We'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been talking about the illusion of death, understanding spiritual connection. And, joining me in studio, Misty Thompson. Misty, we've been talking about your connection with your sister and that spiritual connection that y'all had even after her death. And right before the break, I thought it was interesting, the concepts when you're connecting with these other spirits, obviously outside of your sister, they're trying to convey the fact that they're okay, that they're with us, that we should live in joy, that we shouldn't be afraid. When you tell clients that, when you're connecting with that, I mean, I'm assuming that a lot of times, it's something that they weren't expecting. But I think when you hear the truth, you feel the truth. Do they pretty much embrace that, or how does that normally work?
Yeah, they do. And a lot of times, it's validation because, like I said, a lot of times they've had dreams or they just had a sense of peace. But there's just something about, I guess, society in general that makes us feel as though if we are happy or if we're experiencing joy, that's wrong. And we need to be grieving. And if we're not grieving, there's something wrong. If we are experiencing a little bit of happiness around the time of our loved one's death, it's not because we're happy they're gone. It's because we know they're okay. But I think what really brings it home for my clients is when I do readings for them, it's not just that message. I bring something very personal to them. And when that comes through, then they absolutely know without a doubt that the message is true. And it does bring them peace. And that's what I'm so happy about, that I'm able to do this. And again, some people may take this wrong, but because I'm choosing to honor my sister, I am grateful and I'm appreciative that I'm able to learn and I'm able to bring a message based on her tragedy. Because the way I look at it, the tragedy happened regardless. And now I'm able to do something good with that tragedy. And that's because her tragedy opened up my spiritual gifts. And because of that, I'm able to help people. And I know that brings her joy because she feels my joy of helping people. And because we are connected soul, the soul connection, and energetically, she feels that as well. And of course, that makes her happy that I'm bringing joy to other people and I'm feeling joy as a result.
How often do you connect with your sister? I mean, is it a daily thing, or how does that work?
Yeah. Well, now, because so much time has gone by, every so often, and it's maybe once every couple of weeks, I might hear a song or I get a little misty-eyed about it, about her death. But so for now, it's not necessarily a direct message or connection with my sister, but I do know there are specific moments, and it is moments like, connecting with you and talking with you, and these opportunities that I get to help spread the message about my book and my connection with my sister. That's how I know that she's with me, and that's how I'm connecting with her in those moments. Because every time I honor her, I know I'm connecting with her.
One of the things when I'm in session with folks, when they've had a family member that has died, and I recently had a client, and her father died, and she feels like she could have been there to help, but there's a long story behind that. But I actually told her, I said, you need to go into your dreams and really be aware of it. She had a dream one night right before session the next day, and, he had come to her in the dream. And I really believe in this kind of stuff. And I said, he came to you in a calm way and in a way that you recognize him. You know what I'm saying? And it was very powerful for her, and it really helped because a lot of times I think that our society has this belief of you're dead, it's over, it's done. The casket, put them in the ground, cremate, whatever. And you're right. There's also that other side of, well, we shouldn't be celebrating anything. This should be a very sad situation. And then you have kind of like that dichotomy of, well, what do I do? You have the New Orleans where it's like a party and a festival where you have a lot of other funerals that are quite somber. And I feel like a lot of it is based on the fact that people just don't know, or too fearful maybe to find out, or just it's hard for them to get outside of this three-dimensional thing we call life to really understand and grasp really how big we truly are individually, energetically, and spiritually. And I think that might be something to peruse as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's the thing that I'm hoping to help in my small way, to help people understand that we are a really tiny part, but we can make a difference in our own world, by me spreading my message. And, what I tell my clients is, when they have dreams, because like I was telling you, a lot of them have dreams. And when they do, as long as it brings them peace, they need not worry about what others think, what society thinks. But it's really difficult sometimes because like you said, people are just afraid. They're afraid to really dive into what they're feeling. And they're so worried about what other people expect of them to feel or how to express death. But again, everybody experiences grief differently. And, I get a lot of clients like yours who, and like you said, there was a long story behind that, but basically, a lot of my clients and people I just talk to in general, they are so hung up on the fact that they should have been there. They should have been there. They left just for a minute and that's when it happened or whatever it is. And, I believe that it happens exactly the way it's supposed to. And I have faith that there's a reason why, for some reason, and I don't know if this has to I don't know why I'm picking this up, but I'm picking up that, I'm seeing somebody laying in a hospital bed and somebody left just to go get a cup of coffee and they came back and their loved one passed. And that happened the way it was supposed to because the loved one who was dying did not want the other person to be in the room when that happened. So, and I don't know why I had to bring that up. So I don't know if you know anybody who resonates with that message, but there was a reason. The loved one who was dying did not want anyone to be there when they passed. And that's why it happened that way. So, yeah, and I think people forget that, you know, they put this guilt on themselves, and I don't know why. I don't understand why it happens, but, you know, it's up to me when I help my clients, and that's where the coaching comes in, to explain to them, you know, and help them through that process so they don't put that burden on them.
That's powerful. Let me ask you, for any of our listening audience, I'm sure that's probably dealing with grief or overcoming it or dealing with it and the loss of a loved one. What are the 3 ways that they can connect with their loved ones on the other side? Mm-hmm. What are some things that they can do that they can do to make that connection?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, like I tell my clients, is to be present in the moment. And I know it's sometimes easier said than done, but being present in the moment allows them to experience those things that are happening right then at that moment. A lot of times, you know, we're off to work and our mind is going on like, oh my gosh, I got to do this. I have to do this. I have to take the kids here. I have to make this for dinner. I got to do this. And as a result, we miss those little things happening. And I don't know why this is coming to me either, but walking outside your house, a butterfly may signify something like maybe that's your mom's favorite. You know, whenever you see a butterfly, it reminds you of your mom. And when that happens, if you're off in your mind just going through the day, you miss that butterfly. And so you miss that opportunity that reminds you of your mom. So those, first and foremost, being present. Another thing is just to talk to them like normal. Just talk to them like you're having a conversation. And it might seem weird at first, but I assure you they can hear you. Another thing is just to trust and have faith and believe in the process. Believe it with every fiber in your being. Another thing that, you know, comes up to me is it goes along with being present, and that is just to sit with that moment when they are being present. Just sit with the moment and reflect on good memories of them.
Good information, Misty. When we return, we'll be talking more about dealing with grief, as well as your tour and your book tour and where our listeners can find you. If you haven't already found my YouTube channel, go to YouTube and search Ashley Burgess, Berges. New content every single week on that channel. And Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
You could be my luck. Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We've been talking about overcoming grief, dealing with it, understanding and seeing the illusion of death. And Misty Thompson has been in the studio talking with us. She has her latest book out, From Grief to Acceptance. You know, Misty, right before the break, we were talking about, you know, dealing with grief and understanding that. But I do have a question, you know, based on this new book, what are some of the main messages, some of those really key drive-it-home messages that you hope people will learn from, not only from your sister's death and that story, but also from the book?
Yeah, well, definitely. The main thing is your loved ones are never far away, even when they pass. In fact, I believe that my sister, in fact, our loved ones can help us even more so on the other side than when they were living. So, you know, it's kind of nice we have that connection and who can help us with everyday things. You know, like I said, with opportunities, I'm able to, you know, speak her message. So I just want people to remember that they are always with us. They have not gone far at all. The other thing, it's all in everybody's perspective. So, you know, something so tragic, and without a doubt, my sister's death was tragic, but at the same time, it's the perspective that you put on it. So I would love, you know, for people to just look at the perspective and maybe change their perspective a little bit to be open to possibilities and to find more joy in that sense. And the other thing is to remember that they're not alone. So many people have lost people, their loved ones. And maybe it's not the same way as it was when my sister died, but nonetheless, most of us have lost close people in our life. And so we're not alone. So you don't have to hide behind it and feel like you are the only one living in that grief, because you're not. We're all suffering at some point in our lives for grief.
That's so true. We're all going to go through it. We're all going to deal with it. We're always, we're all going to lose a loved one, and it's about how we see things. And I like that you use the word perspective, because there's always different ways of seeing things. And one of the things that I find very important in our life too is that, for the most part, we were all raised, by parents that really care. But remember, our parents could only explain to us or share with us things that they understood. And so sometimes we have to change our life perspective based on our own new chosen reality. And so, that's why I like having folks like Misty on the show, because we can really kind of push the envelope on some things and be able to digest things like this, like death, and understanding that in a different way, in a more comprehensive way. So what's on the horizon for you, Misty? I know, you have the new book out. What do you have going on?
Well, I'm really excited. This is my second book, and I've done 8 compilation books. But this is the first time I've actually scheduled a tour. So we have a book tour, and we're actually going to kick it off in Seattle, which is, wasn't expecting that at all, but I'm really excited to do that. So it's going to start at the end of July. We're going to be, I say we because my publicist will be there supporting me, and my youngest daughter will be coming with me. But so I'll be at Barnes and Noble in Seattle, and we're working on some other dates there in the Seattle area as well at the end of July.
Oh, that's awesome! Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I love it, and I love the story behind everything, and I love you being so forthright in dealing with this, because this is a tragedy that you've turned into a learning process. You've turned into something that has advanced your life. You turn that into something that can advance other people's life, help them understand better the spirit situation, but also help them to mitigate grief, and that's very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's I want to say that's my mission, and it is, but mainly it's my sister's, and I'm just the tool. She's just using me to the platform to get her message out there to help others.
Let me ask you, for listeners that are listening to the show right now, how can they find you on social media and connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, they can always go to my website, mistymthompson.com. And I'm on Facebook, Mystified Enlightenment. I'm on Instagram, Misty_M_Thompson. And I do have something for your listeners. I put together 2 of the 5 phases that I talk about in my book to help us through grief. And I put together a PDF to help them with 2 of these, and that's forgiveness and vulnerability. So if they want to go to my website, mistymthompson.com/acceptance, and that will be available for them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I really find that a lot of folks, too, one of the things is, the mindfulness. Well, that's one of the biggest things, Misty, is being mindful. And I find that that's something that can really change our life forever in every single area, but also to be aware of kind of the stuff that's almost not necessarily unseen, but I think the things that are mostly overlooked in our day-to-day life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And our world is so fast-paced, and at the same time, we kind of allow that to happen. We create our reality. And, there are times where we need to just take a step back, and we just need to meditate, pray, whatever it is that you all want to do. I meditate, I do prayer, and slow down a little bit and take in life so it doesn't get so overwhelming, and especially when it comes to grief. And it's a perfect opportunity to connect with your loved ones.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Misty. I look forward to having you back on the show if you're willing to come on.
Absolutely. I would be happy to.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of walk through some of the stuff that you work through as well with your clients. I think that's very valuable. Thank you so much. Any last words that you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, well, I just hope that people can find a little bit of peace in the book, or if they're in the Seattle area and they're able to, see me live. That's my mission, is just to help people find a little bit of peace so they can live a full life and be the best version of themselves.
Thank you, Misty, for coming on Live Your True Life Perspectives. We can't wait to have you back on. Look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Great conversation with Misty, and I think that really helps us all to understand death and the illusion of that, but also being able to handle it better and being able to be there and to see things in a more mindful state, because that is true power and true understanding and the true reveal. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.